which are also from a different field, so that we are more focused on the business field. So we look at the data eligibility, which means we use inclusion, exclusion criteria. We make sure that all peer-reviewed journal articles are included. We also exclude non-English language articles because we are not able to translate those articles if they are in a different language. Some of the review articles, they could be looking into different areas, but they also a literature review of the body of knowledge, but they are not eligible for this case because then we will be overlapping with them. Proceedings papers, which are conference papers, they are still papers in development, so we will not use them. And then we do a data analysis. We look into the title, the abstract, the keywords, and theme of each article. So from here, you can see that first we are able to screen 87 papers, which cover these two terms. And then we narrow down to 61 papers. And from these 61 papers, we identify 426 keywords, which are related to blockchain competitive advantage in the business. And then we do a co-occurrence of the keywords using a minimum of 4 co-occurrences. We don't want to have 2 low co-occurrence, means like 1 or 2, it means that there's hardly any match or similarity. So from here, we find about 30 keywords that meet the threshold, and then we further filter it to 25 keywords, and we found that there are 3 emerging themes that emerge from 3 clusters. So you can see from here, we use the software called the Voice Viewer, so we can generate 3 interrelated research clusters or themes here. So we are now going to understand what are these 3 themes based on the types of keywords that cluster around each of the themes. We also want to study the timeline of the change in terms of the studies. So for example, here we find that in the early days, especially in the early, from 2017 up to 2020 also, we find that most of the studies actually look into the impact of the blockchain or the technology at the firm level. Subsequently, it actually moves forward as more research understands the impact of the technology at the firm level. They move on to understanding the technology level. What are the characteristics? How can it improve the firm's competitiveness and so on? Then, as the understanding of the research grows, then we find that more recent articles start to look into the application and the contribution at the industry level. So these are the 3 themes. And if we look at the different clusters, these are the 3 clusters. You can see green, red, and blue. We find that the first one, under firm level, we have keywords like competitive advantage, firm impact, IT, innovation. This actually describes how the impact is happening to the company. At the technology level, we see keywords like big data or Bitcoin. This is actually mostly for systems. This is mainly focusing on the characteristics of the technology. Then finally, at industry level, we find keywords like big data analytics, industry 4.0, internet as a whole, internet of things or supply chain management. These are the applications at the industry level, mostly the use cases. So we also analyze what are the topics associated with competitive advantage by blockchain. And we find these are the top 10 topics. The first one is about managing the technology or managing the firm. The second one is on design and manufacturing. And you find the third one is on sustainability science. Of course, we also have distributed and real-time computing, AI, machine learning. Education is also an important part. There's a lot of studies done on blockchain application in education, especially the credentials at higher education. Then we also see areas like risk assessment or communication. So what we have found is that at the firm level, we find most of these studies actually look into how blockchain actually improves the business performance. They look into commercialization, operational capabilities and efficiency, and also the critical resource allocation. But at the technology level, we focus on the characteristics of the technology. It does enhance the trust. It provides transparency, security, traceability, data identification, and also transaction honesty. And at the industry level, we are looking at enabling the digitalization and integration with other technologies. It can be a lot of other new technologies like artificial intelligence, in supply chain, you have robotic process control, and so on. So this will provide better visibility and collaboration in the industry 4.0. So in conclusion, we find that when firms improve their operational cost and efficiency, they can utilize their resources better, and then they improve their performance overall. And of course, all this will contribute to sustainable business. So using emerging technology or adopting emerging technologies can offer firms such opportunities. So these are the business use cases. We find that blockchain-based microcredit for peer lending to micro entrepreneurs and also social businesses. And we also see that there is efficient for high security sharing of patient data in healthcare. In pharmaceutical, it is important to have traceability and elimination of counterparty risk. And then, as I mentioned earlier about educational institutions, the authentication of digital credentials is important so that the employer is able to validate that the certification is actually authentic, is real. Then they can also verify with the university that issues the credentials. And this is also very useful when it comes to training for professionals. Cost and resource allocation can be removed when you remove the intermediaries in the payment system. So when you don't have a middle person, for example, to charge your service charge, then of course your cost will reduce, the cost of transaction, and you also reduce any use of additional resources. So when firms improve their operational cost and efficiency, this will lead to better or improve sustainable business. So if you like to understand more and also more details, you can actually refer to my latest published book, where we are editors. In fact, this research is actually published within this book. We edited this book as an opportunity for PhD students and master students to collaborate with supervisors, and also for early career researchers to have an opportunity to share their research. So all in all, this book actually looks into the challenges and opportunities for business when they embrace emerging technologies. We also find that the adoption has two parts. It can come from the user perspective and also business perspective, how users perceive the usage of this technology, and also how business perceive the adoption of this technology, so that business and the users can understand how these technologies are applied to one another. And of course, we also provide the practical know-how of embracing emerging technologies for competitive advantage. So these are the references I use, and thank you very much. I'll be happy to take any questions if you have.
The sessions question and answer sessions is after this.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we move to Q&A sessions, and these Q&A sessions will moderate by Professor Dr. Donat Games, and we invite our moderators and our invited speakers that come physically in Convention Hall Universitas Andalas. To Professor Dr. Donat Games and Professor Dr. Muhammad Azmi Omar, the stage is yours.
All right. Silakan duduk. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Donat Games. Tapi jangan salah, I'm not from Portugal or Mexico. I'm from West Sumatra, dari Sumatera Barat. Yeah. We are fortunate to have great speakers today from Professor Asmi. We can take some lessons, especially about the importance of blended finance. And he keeps emphasizing the importance of sustainable development goals. And in this case, more specifically, sustainable finance. From Jiwang, we can take some lessons from Jiwang, especially about the importance of research in disaster management and resiliency. And from Andre Kok, he focuses on the importance of digital innovations. I think PhD students or doctoral students, especially who attend this event today, can benefit from Andre Kok and Jiwang. And unfortunately, we still don't see Professor Kim. Do we have Professor Kim? No, not really. So, please let me know if you have any questions from to our great speakers. But let me ask one important questions first to our Professor asked me. My questions is, what is the ideal type of blended finance, especially in the context of Indonesia? Because I know, and you have let us know about your wealth of experience in the context of Indonesia. You know Indonesia very well. So, according to you, what is the ideal type of blended finance or sustainable finance that can be implemented in the context of Indonesia? Yes, Prof.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prof, for the question. And the question is about the application of blended finance and how we can use it for, maybe if I can skew towards research. See, as I mentioned earlier on, blended finance is not new. It has been implemented many years ago, I think for more than already 30 years, blended finance. Before I give the example that can be considered in Indonesia, let me give you an example of blended finance when I was working at Islamic Development Bank, Jeddah. See, for example, there are three parties involved. And this is a real example. Three parties involved. One party is the government of Nigeria. Second party is Gates Foundation, Bill Gates Foundation. And the third party is Islamic Development Bank. At that time, Nigeria had problem of polio. You know polio, kan? Polio had problem of polio. So many young children were affected by polio. And to eradicate polio, you require vaccine, polio vaccine. And Nigeria has limited foreign exchange to buy the vaccine for their children. So what is done is they approach Islamic Development Bank. So Islamic Development Bank provide loan to Nigeria to buy the vaccine. So as you know, any financing, any loan, you have the principal and you have the interest. Islamic Development Bank, of course, does not charge interest, but there is a profit component to it. So who pays for the interest or the profit component? Bill Gates pay for the interest. Bill Gates Foundation. So Bill Gates Foundation provides philanthropic fund. So Nigeria government will only pay the principal amount to Islamic Development Bank for the vaccine. The profit or the interest portion is paid by Bill Gates Foundation to Islamic Development Bank. So example, the cost of the vaccine is 100 million. The interest is 10 million. So technically, Nigerian government has to pay 110 million. Right. You follow?
Yep.
So that 10 million profit or interest component is not paid by Nigerian government, but paid by Bill Gates Foundation. So you have example of a commercial finance. You have another component, which is the philanthropic fund.
Yep.
And it helps the country which is having problems of financial situation. Okay, that's one example.
Yep.
So if you take the example of a country and you bring to micro entrepreneur, okay, make it lower, micro entrepreneur, what you can do is that first you develop, to do research, you develop impact measurement. Impact measurement before the project is implemented. Okay, impact measurement. What is the impact measurement? For example, you want to develop the micro entrepreneurs from very poor into better off economically.
Yep.
So you measure the pre-financing and the post-financing.
Longitudinal study. Yeah.
Okay, you understand? So how do you support them? Most micro entrepreneurs now need digital training because they can sell in, say, for example, Bukalapak, or they can sell in, now very popular in Indonesia, Shopee.
Shopee.
Because of the jet. Shopee. Or they want to sell in Shopee, for example. But they need digital training. So how do you train? What is, if a BNT, there's a cost for that training. So that cost, training cost, can be obtained from the zakat fund.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the zakat fund, or from the donation fund, the sadaqah fund.
Yep.
Okay, in Malaysia, for example, the Islamic banks, they pay zakat. Bank Syariah membayar zakat. That zakat money that is paid is returned back to the bank as wakalah, wakil. Example, the bank pays, let's say we say 100 million zakat, 10% comes back. 10 million comes back as zakat wakalah. What does zakat wakalah means? The bank is given the wakil to distribute the zakat. Okay, that 10%.
Okay.
Okay, so the bank then use that money for training purposes. Customer does not need to pay because that is the zakat money. So that is to train them on digitalization. So you have that zakat money coming in for capacity building, and then micro entrepreneurs get financing from the commercial finance of the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then they do the business over a period. So as I mentioned, you measure the indicators before they get the training and the financing, and you measure, let's say, 6 months to 1 year after they get the financing, and that will be your research projects, and you can publish because there's a lot of research done on actual projects done.
Yeah, very interesting, Professor Asmi, because we have discussed previously about the importance of research which can provide social impact, right?
Yes.
So your explanation can inspire us, especially for our young researchers, to conduct some research that can benefit communities, especially the poorest one.
Yes.
All right. Ibu dan Bapak, does anyone have questions or comment? Yeah, silakan. Kepada siapa? We have four speakers, Dr. Jiwang, Dr. Ande Kwok, Professor Asmi.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Introduce myself, Prof. I am Gustina. I am ex-your student from IIUM in 2010.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming my university today. Yes, I really happy you are come to my university. Discuss with you is remind me again what kind of kuliah after in 2010. Okay. Okay. As you say in your explanation, you say that the big issue now is climate change, its impact to our sustainable finance. Okay. So in your mind, what the big issue related to the finance and accounting we can run in our research today? Okay, number one. Second one, yeah, you say that about the blended of finance. Yeah, if we want to run a research or like a mini research blended with finance, what kind of the data we used in order to your recommended? Yeah, and the third one, from your explanations, we can use the zakat fund or a wakaf fund to finance the poor, right? Okay, is it the same with the CSR in the company? Okay, thank you, Prof. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me I answer one by one. The first question is about the impact in terms of the climate change. See, under the I'm not sure whether you're aware, the one of the requirements by the Financial Services Board, FSB, in the Geneva, is that in Brussels, sorry, is that all banks in the world must address climate change. Okay, but of course it depends whether you are regional bank, you are national, international banks. But banks at the national level, not the bank daerah, but national level, they are mandated by all regulators now to report on their climate change effort because it's number one issue in the world. And how do you do that is that there is a sustainability reporting mandated. It's not the annual report. Annual report is a normal annual report published by banks, but there is another report that they have to produce. That report, now what most banks are doing, they integrate together annual report and sustainability report. But many banks now, they created a separate sustainability report. And that sustainability report shows what are their activities and actions that they do to address climate change. Example, real example. You have batu bara in Indonesia. Batu bara is considered as one of the major polluters in the world. So you have to reduce the use of batu bara for generation of electricity. So the question is, how long do you take to reduce that? Last night I was in the discussion on this renewable energy in Malaysia together with the Prime Minister of Malaysia last night. So in Malaysia, we decided in Malaysia it's about 2050 to go to zero batu bara. So you cannot produce any more electricity by 2050 in Malaysia using batu bara. That means that you have to use renewable energy, wind, solar, and so on. Okay? You have to use that. So in between now, 2024 to 2050, this is what we meant by transition risk. you are transitioning into lower and lower fuel and batubara. That must be reported in your annual report. Okay. So for a bank, if they say that we will not fund batubara, they have to have a plan and they have to show that that percentage is reduced every year. And this is monitored by the regulator.
One
Yes.
minute, 1 minute more.
Mm.
1 minute lagi.
Oh, 1 minute again.
Yeah.
Okay. The other one is on the question of the designing of the study, for example, on the blended finance. I think blended finance is now one of the key things. I mean, I don't have the time to explain, but later on, I can explain that you can create a study on the impact of blended finance towards poverty alleviation. That you can produce as a policy paper, you can produce as a journal paper, you can do it. Because that is, earlier on, I think one of the professors was talking about action learning, and this is an example of where you can produce papers from the actual projects. That's all.
Iya, sangat menarik ya. Jadi Profesor Asmi itu menekankan pentingnya riset yang memiliki social impact gitu ya. Social impact and longitudinal study. Jadi semacam sebelum dan sesudah ya. I think this is very inspiring. This is encouraging, especially for our young researchers, PhD students, to benefit from this. Prof Asmi, we also have Dr. Andre Kok and Dr. Jiwang. Does anyone have questions to Dr. Jiwang and Dr. Andre? Dr. Jiwang is focusing on disaster management, especially in terms of research in resiliency, and then Kok is focusing on digital innovation. Does anyone have questions? Dr. Andre, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
My questions is, could you briefly explain about the possibility of digital technology to benefit especially small business owners, especially in the context of Malaysia and Indonesia?
Yes, thank you so much for this question. I think it's a very wonderful question, and it's very useful because it's something that a lot of small businesses are impacted by the use of technologies. In fact, they can actually benefit a lot, especially when it comes to electronic payment, or now we use a lot of our mobile payment with our handphone. So you find that a lot of small business owners, and they are starting to accept mobile payment. It actually facilitates the transaction much easily. So with this adoption of technology, they can easily use and open up the transactions. That's one thing. And you find that platforms like Gojek, like in Malaysia we have Grab, they have the super app, Tokopedia, and in Indonesia. With this super app, right, a lot of small businesses, they have access to the platform, then they can advertise their business. So they don't need a brick and mortar. That means they don't need a physical store. So it's actually very cost efficient for them. Without owning a store, very small business owners, they can operate from their own home. And when there's an order, the platform provides them the order, and they can actually reach the customers. Even for normal common people, those who those who go for freelance, they actually go into delivery, as delivery drivers, and all that. These opportunities for them in terms of employment opportunities also. So it's actually a wonderful opportunity for the whole economy, because it means that many people actually benefit. Those who have no access to customers have now opportunities to use a platform to access to customers.
Thank you very much, Dr. Andre Kok. And Does anyone have questions to? Yes, yes, please.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ujang Sumarwan from IPB University. Yeah, I would like to ask a question to Dr. Wong and Wang. Yeah. First is the digital technology is mostly people are easy to accept. Yeah, but many times we understand that the digital technology also bring the cyber risk. Yeah, and how to deal with that. Yeah, how to encourage people that they have to be aware, yeah, about the risk. As we understand in Indonesia, I think 1 or 2 months ago, where the national data is break, yeah, by the hackers, and especially if the technology is adopted by the small business company and they don't have capacity, they don't have ability to deal with the cyber risk. And the second question is, I think in tourism and also disaster and also the disabled resident, yeah, how the government to deal with the needs of these disabled resident, because they are also part of our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first question is about digital trust to Dr. Andekwok, and the second one is about the role of governments in disaster risk management. Dr. Andekwok, please.
Sure. Thank you so much. It's a very important question actually, because with the rise of technologies and digitalization, our personal security, our privacy is something that we really need to understand and to really protect our. And most importantly is actually awareness and education. It is true that small business owners, especially if they are new to these technologies, they need to be aware of how to protect themselves and their business in this case. So I think most importantly, now we see that every opportunity has a challenge. There's always threats also, and there's always benefits. So we always have to balance these two. And it is important that the awareness is that we have to use trustworthy sources. That means the government also needs to play a very important role to regulate and to create this awareness and education for everyone. At the same time, for those who are starting to adopt these technologies, it's important that you use trustworthy sources. That means you must know that, okay, this is well adopted, this company is already well established, so you have the better confidence. When it comes to untested new technologies, perhaps that is most important that you educate yourselves. It is true that this is a rising trend that everyone is aware of. Cybersecurity has been more important than ever before.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Andekwok. And G, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me now? Yeah, I just want to respond to the questions related to government needs related to disability residents. It's not easy for everybody to realize the importance of inclusion. So nowadays, diversity inclusion becomes an important social evaluation. So when we talk about the ESG, talking about environmental, social, and governance, we become more and more aware that the importance of looking at a variety of needs and not only consumers, but also our local residents. So government definitely play an important role. I just want to use the example of Brisbane or Queensland to talk about this. So I'm currently working on a project to evaluate a government project, try to enhance accessibility for the travel industry. So government provide millions of dollars to support local small businesses, or not only small, but the tour operators to upgrade their infrastructure, to try to build the accessible destination, prepare for the Olympics and Paralympics in 8 years. At this stage, a lot of the training have been provided. And so the government has one organization provided training for people who are the employers, managers, employees, like who are the service provider to get immersed in some of the training they call the Access Accelerator program. So the people who probably don't have an idea about disability have a chance to practice in the real life. So people have a chance to sit in the wheelchair and go to, let's say, somewhere 1 kilometer away, and the participants feel it's very difficult. Even get onto the bus, how to purchase an ice cream with the blind folder, or you can only use non-verbal approach to talk to people, to order some food and drinks. And so this is more awareness training. So at the moment, the government is trying to raise the awareness for people who working in the service industry to realize, oh, that's the gap. And then if they have the awareness, then later on they will develop some small action and behavior to facilitate that better to serve customers. So first is the awareness training. Government need to provide funding and need to support that. And second is about regulation. Definitely, we need a lot of the guidance, standards. There is a lack of standards for the government, for the industry and the tour operators to know what is the best way to create a disabled toilet or accessible room, hotel room. There is no global standards there. So not only one government need to work on that, multiple countries need to come together to develop international standards to help the industry to serve that. And then we definitely need a multi-stakeholder perspective to understand the needs of accessibility, the disability requirement, and so on. And people also need to change the mindset, the attitudes in terms of the workforce. So we don't not only serve people with disability, we also need people who are disabled to come to the workforce, be employed in the hotel, employed in some of the service sector to serve people. So that's a long journey. I don't think it's an easy task right now. Not only, let's say, hard in Australia, I think it's even harder in developing countries like Indonesia and many other Asian Pacific countries to raise the awareness, to develop the regulation, to encourage people who are the boss to hire people with disability, all kinds of disability. So it's a long way, but we definitely need a collaboration. So yeah, that's my response. Thank you.
Yes, indeed, a long way to go, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you, Dr. G. I noticed some keywords: people, prosperity, participation, collaborations, and innovations. So that concludes our presentation. That concludes our event for today. Yes. Last but not least, yes.
Assalamualaikum. One last question to Professor Dato Muhammad Azmi. As we understand that Islamic Bank introduced in Indonesia during the 90s, yeah, and the market share is, I think, less than 10%. I would like to know how the comparison between Malaysia and Indonesia in terms how is the adoption of the Islamic Bank in Indonesia. It takes not very fast, yeah. And how about the comparison is there any relationship with the Islamic financial literacy? And do you have some data comparison between Islamic bank in Malaysia and in Indonesia, especially in the market sector? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. To be frank with you, in early September, I was invited to Jakarta for a closed door discussion to give input to the incoming President Prabowo's team on Islamic finance. So I was asked to give what are the key things that should be looked at to bring Islamic finance in Indonesia higher, because currently the percentage is about less than 12%. If you expand banking and others, slightly more than 12%, slightly. Although Bank Muamalat started in 1993 in Indonesia. So I think one of the key things that you will see is that one is Indonesia developed organically, which means that from the bottom up, it's developed Islamic finance. In Malaysia, is a combination of bottom up and top down. So that combination, everyone support Islamic finance, both Muslims and non-Muslims. So that's one. So you find that when any law ataupun undang-undang being brought to the parliament, or kalau di sini DPR, everybody support. Whether you are government party, you are opposition party, you are Muslim or non-Muslim, everyone support Islamic finance. So that's one of the key factors that you see. Support from non-Muslims is very important. Why? Because they are the one that holds the economic power. Pribumi, population besar tetapi economic powernya kurang. So you have strong support from the non-Muslim in Malaysia. Why non-Muslim support Islamic finance? Because they see that as ethical finance. So that's why it's important to position Islamic finance not as religious finance per se. Kalau kita position as is religious finance, they bilang, ini untuk Muslim, bukan untuk us. But if you position Islamic finance or Sharia finance as ethical, responsible finance, then you will get support from people, from non-Muslim. So that's the second factor. So percentage-wise in Malaysia, we have about 46%. Banking alone, I'm talking about banking sahaja 46%. Kalau capital market is almost 70%. Capital market is a very significant amount. Kalau capital market. So apart from the support from non-Muslim, support from the people both bottom and top up, is also that in Malaysia, whenever any new policies, they try to ensure that that policy is supportive of Islamic finance. New policy. So like the kebijakan oleh pemerintah, there will be policies that try to support Islamic finance. So that's the idea. So most banks, they practice what we call Islamic finance first. Most banks, Islamic finance first, which means that when you open a bank account, the bank will give you Islamic accounts. Unless you say, no, I don't want. Then they give you the conventional account. So mindset is very important. And very importantly, do you know Islamic Financial Services Board, IFSB, is the board that sets the prudential standards. There is one standard which was launched recently, the corporate governance standard. I wrote that standard. We make it mandatory for Board of Commissioners to be trained on Islamic finance. Because you need to have the Board of Commissioners, or what we call the Board of Directors, to understand Islamic finance so that they drive Islamic finance. That's another important.
All right. So another important issue is about policy. So that's it. That concludes our event for today. Please join me applauding our great speakers.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we move to another sessions. Is souvenirs handover from Universitas Andalas for Chairman of Aliansi Program Dokter Manajemen Indonesia, Profesor Dr. Tanti Handriana SAMSI, and our keynote speaker, Profesor Dato Dr. Muhammad Azmi Omar. We invite Profesor Dr. Tanti Handriana SAMSI and our keynote speaker, Profesor Dato Dr. Muhammad Azmi Omar to in front of the stage. And this souvenir will be handed over by Wakil Dekan 1 Faculty Economy and Business Universitas Andalas, Dr. Asniati MBA. Jangan diganti dulu, jangan diganti. Alright. Ini Bapak, 1, 3, gabung.